Hi, everyone. We made it to the last discussion of the semester. So let's start off with, can data mining catch terrorists? Well, data mining is the process of analyzing large data sets to discover meaningful or usually targeted patterns, trends, or relationships that aren't otherwise obvious. And you can use data mines to scour databases all over the place. And the government specifically has vast databases containing information on, well, almost anything you do. Any purchases you make, you rent a car, anything, register your car, all of that is stored in a database. And they can use an algorithm to scan the whole thing. And we know that it's a process or a set of rules that have to be followed to help problem solve and for other computations. It'll have like search for a specific word, and every time that word pops up, it'll pop up, and that creates more data for to be filtered and gone through later on. Now, this is something where can it find terrorists? Yeah, kind of. There was an experiment done in 2006. I think you're checking my notes. I think it was 2006 by the founder of a data mining company who went through a ton of data that included data from all 19 hijackers that were involved in 9/11. The data mining flagged 1,200 people and only 5 of the actual terrorists, which, that's 20%. It's not great. 25, a little less than 25%, which, since they purposely put their information in that particular scan, it really didn't look great for data mining to be able to do what they wanted it to do. That sounds so serious, but sometimes data mining is used for fun too. You can data mine particular databases for games and find out, there's going to be a new character coming out, or a special deal, or a new event, or content, or something like that. And data mines will be used by content creators to create YouTube videos to give their subscribers the scoop on what's coming in their game. Although that is a data mine, it's something that's in the system but not necessarily official, so it's subject to change. But I digress. Go back. Can data mining actually find terrorists? The short answer is no, because algorithms just aren't perfect. You can search by words like fertilizer, country of origin, this certain truck rentals that correspond to when they purchased a fertilizer, which is an ingredient for making boom. So they can do that, but it's really not a perfect system, because even if you have 99% accuracy, if you search 20 million people, that gives you 2 million false flags. That's not efficient. It's shown, and they show this in an article by online.informs.org, posted an article about that in January of 2009. And they outlined some specific queries like country of origin, purchases fertilizer, and then rents a truck, within a few months of purchasing that fertilizer. I mean, sometimes maybe it's obvious because, well, they live in they live in a place where there's no yards, so buying 500 pounds of fertilizer is a little suspicious, but it's not always that easy. And that would be the like I said, the false positives are the main problem with that, and you also have to go through all of that and filter out all of it, and it's just not an efficient process. Now, the article also did mention that there had been 25 foiled terrorist attacks since 9/11. There have been 25 foiled terrorist attacks by 2009. 5 of them were discovered partially by data mining, but the majority of them were really due diligence by people on the targeted site that noticed suspicious activity and reported it. Some of it was done by police investigations that were investigating something else, and they discovered evidence of a terrorist plot during their investigation, and it was foiled that way. That's just something where it's more... It's still better for us to keep our eyes open, and when you see something, report it, than it is to rely on technology to dig out names and go and investigate all these flags individually. It's just not an efficient way of doing it. Now, it's something where it would take... They need to really refine the algorithms in order to even have a chance at this working, and then, have specialized trained people that can go through and filter out what are actual, not that are ones that are flagged, filter out the ones that are actual possibility of being a terrorist sleeper cell or something like that. Maybe they could do that, and they also have to be able to coordinate with law enforcement officials in that area so a proper investigation can be done, because due process is very important. And that it's just something that we haven't quite perfected yet. Maybe in the future it would be a much better idea to not give people the reason to be terrorists to begin with. Now, let's go on to the second one. How secure is democracy? I don't know if all of you remember the 2000 election, but I sure do. That is one where Bush won by 547 votes. That's it. And that was all in Florida, and it was something where they actually used optical scan, which, you've used it in school, where you have your number 2 pencil and you're filling in a circle, and then you run it through a machine and it scans it and sees what you voted for. They had little chads that you would pop out, and it would see the hole and then count it. But the hanging chad, if you ever saw How I Met Your Mother, that was one of the costumes, was literally a hanging chad. They didn't get counted, so they had to count everything by hand. And that's how it ended up with just 547 votes. So your votes do matter in an election quite a bit. And then we had the 2016 election, where through an FBI investigation, they found that Russian hackers, influencers, went and interfered in the election and influenced our voters to vote for Trump. And it worked. Now, there were a lot of things that happened during that were very, very sketchy, such as the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton was targeted with a specific spear phishing email. Spear phishing being something where they really researched and made the email look, they researched the individual themselves and made the email look like it came from a trusted source. Like it could be a friend or a company that they were working with or something like that. But he clicked on a link before he really had scanned the email. And that link instantly gave hackers access to sensitive documents, communications, and they gathered all of that up and they posted it on WikiLeaks, and it was really a black eye for the campaign. And that just made people lose a lot of faith in Hillary herself, because it just makes you look bad. Along with her being released a week or two before the election, that she had used an email server inappropriately when she was Secretary of State. So that just kind of compounds and makes people lose confidence, and then she lost votes. Was that the Russian interference was not... it was something where we could prove that there was interference by Russian operatives, but they couldn't prove that they were working for anyone directly. So it's something where you have to rely on individuals' intelligence, and that's not always the greatest idea. But they have something where you have direct recording systems. Like in our voting, we have voting machines with direct recording electronic systems, or DREs, which is your touch screen that comes up and you just touch who you're voting for. It's usually a little block. And then you also have the optical scan that I mentioned before, where you color in with a pencil, which is what we do in Massachusetts. Those are never connected to the internet, so they can't be hacked. If you interfere with those, it's because you were physically in front of the machine and fiddled with it directly. So those are certainly more secure from one aspect, but you also have the 2020 election where a widespread fraud was spewed out again and again, saying that this election was fraudulent, even though no evidence was ever presented. And they made so many lies about voting machines that one company sued a couple of people for defamation, and they won, and basically ruined to the people that couldn't keep their mouths shut. I'm not going to even bother to say they're not worth mentioning. That's something where they thought the voting machines had been tampered with, but there was never any evidence of voting machines being tampered with in the 2020 election. Certainly not widespread, although it's just that people in power are loath to relinquish it. And you have things you have to worry about, like gerrymandering, unjust voting laws, closing polling locations so that people have to travel much, much further in order to vote. You have 20 states that you have to have an excuse to get an absentee ballot, a valid excuse, in order to vote. So they just make it harder and harder. The funny thing is about the list that I just gave you is all of that is legal. So people in power are loath to relinquish it. That's why I think our democracy is really hanging by a thread. It's a very thin thread. You don't know who to trust. It's something where our vote is our voice. That is our voice in democracy, is our vote. It is very important that everyone gets a chance to vote, and all the votes are counted as they are. However, whatever method we use for that. It doesn't matter if it's voting machines. It doesn't matter if it's hand counted. It's something where everybody's vote needs to count. That is the only way democracy works. And unfortunately, I have to wonder who is on our side. Well, that's it for our discussions. For this semester, anyway. I look forward to seeing yours.